When you don't have that, you're in fight or flight mode and you're always going to react based on emotion. And that reaction, most of the times, is going to be the wrong reaction. It's the one that's going to get you in more trouble.
Some coming of age to make yourselves tougher. You had to go through training. You had to deal with a lot of things. But for us in the civilian world, we don't have that ring of fire. We don't have a gauntlet to go through. The truth of it is a lot of us are just little bitches. And once you start doing jiu-jitsu for a while, you're like, oh, I'm noticing that the bitch is leaving my system.
The norm rather than the exception is to be comfortable. And we can find comfort anywhere because that's what we do as humans. But that's not going to help us grow. It's just going to help us stay where we are.
All right. Airlock Jiu Jitsu in the house. What's up, fellas?
What's going on?
How you doing, Nathan?
Good, good. So this episode is one that I've been waiting for a long time. I've been wanting to record this one, obviously, because I love you guys. I love what you do. And I think it's going to be a fun conversation. So we've got Ray Villa here, and we've got Tyler Hixson, both from Airlock Jiu Jitsu. And yeah, I have like a little warm-up question for you guys. What is the longest you've ever seen anyone stay at the white belt level?
20 years.
20 years? Oh, I think I got like 8 or 9 more years to catch up. Yeah, I started jiu-jitsu if you don't count Army Combatives, I started a lot, like probably 2013 or something like that. And I'm just that guy who like pops in, pops out, pops in, pops out. So never actually advances in the belts, but obviously still learning a lot. And you guys have taught me a ton recently, which is why I'm excited to have you on the show.
Awesome. Great, bro. Excited too, man. You've been a great student. Sometimes a nightmare, depending on which day. You are definitely a tall order on the mats, dude.
Yeah,
and I do mean a nightmare in a good way. That is actually a compliment where we come from.
Yeah. Well, that's what I love about jiu-jitsu. It's honestly the coolest, in my opinion. It's like, where else can you, like, quite literally almost kill or severely injure somebody and then, like, stand up and give them a hug and be like, thanks, bro. Like, that was awesome.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because the first time that my wife watched me train, I mean, years ago, I was a blue belt. She went to some open mat with me and sat in the corner just watching. And that's exactly what she said. It's like, this is so weird. You guys were trying to kill each other. And as soon as the bell goes off, everybody's hugging each other, like giving each other love, saying how good you are. And it's just great. But yeah, that's how you do it.
Yeah. It kind of brings me to one of the questions that I had. It's like, I'd like to hear from both of you. You know, how did you first hear of jiu-jitsu and like what made you get started with it?
Ray, I know I've not been talking a lot yet, but you still got to answer this one first because, I mean, your story is more important than mine, and mine's shorter anyway.
Sure, I guess. I don't know if it's more important, but yeah, it's definitely longer. I actually started out in the Army. I started with the Army Combatives program. So actually, let me go back a little more. As a kid, I grew up in the martial arts. I did traditional martial arts, did karate, did a little bit of Chinese martial arts stuff. So it's always something that I wanted to continue doing. I remember one of the things that I learned about the Army when I was looking into joining, it was like they had this thing called Combatives, and I just watched a couple of like old crusty videos from Matt Larson online and stuff. I was like, oh man, this is great. I want to do it. And ever since day one in the Army, I was just chasing it. When do we do Combatives? I was that annoying kid, hey, are we doing Combatives? Are we doing it? I was like, no, we're not doing that right now. Just be quiet. Until finally, after, being that squeaky wheel for many, many years, I finally got him to send me to Combatives Level 1. It's a week course, very, very basic. You learn just a couple of techniques and learn a lot of conceptual stuff, right? But I loved it. I was hooked. And after a while, I again managed to con my unit into sending me to 2, 3, and 4 back to back. So I was actually gone for like 3 months doing all of the combatives. And I just fell in love with grappling. I had a background on stand-up and other stuff, never grappled before. I was absolutely horrible at grappling. I was that guy that got tapped by every single person in the class. But still, I loved it. I couldn't get enough. I mean, I saw it as a challenge. I was like, I need to learn this because when it comes to fighting and being a soldier, this is where we need to be. So, the rest is history. Obviously, we don't train enough in the Army due to time constraints and, planning many other things. So eventually I found my way to jiu-jitsu so I can complement my grappling. And my idea was, and this is funny too, now that I think about it. So I'm just going to do jiu-jitsu, maybe get to like blue belt and then I'll be okay. And, maybe just quit and stay there. Got my blue belt and realized that I still didn't know anything, so I just kept going. And I mean, here I am, 15 years later. I'm a black belt, still feeling that I don't know anything. So the journey never ends.
Yeah, that's been
Yeah.
my experience. I feel like I never never know anything. Yeah, Tyler, I'd
Yeah,
love to hear
dude.
your origin story with jiu-jitsu.
Sure. I don't know how far back it goes. I think when I was in college, I saw some video that I want to say it was on this website called Art of Manliness. I don't know if you remember this site, but it was like it was decent articles and stuff, right? And he did a little profile with Henry Gracie, the best car salesman jiu-jitsu's ever had, and he just talks through the basics of what this thing is. And I remember I was so interested at that point, but it was years later when I started like most people starting to hear about it in more popular media and culture and stuff. Jiu-jitsu. Started to kind of look into it. I had a podcast at the time, and I ended up trying a class in a random spot in New Mexico, of all places. It was a Gracie Baja in New Mexico, and they were super nice to me, and they gave me my first class, and I was like, uh-oh, this might be a thing for me. And so about 4 years ago, I started taking it a little more seriously, started training. I had kind of a unique experience because my wife and I lived in an RV for four full years on the road, just everywhere, all over the country, staying anywhere from 2 weeks to a month at a time, maybe. And so I got to train at dozens of different jiu-jitsu gyms, see a ton of different styles, see gyms that worked and saw gyms that didn't work, and pick up so many techniques from just black belts all over the country. And I just sucked for a really long time, and I still suck. And then all of a sudden, Ray threw a purple belt at me. I don't know. When was that? I don't know. A couple months ago, I guess.
Yeah, like 6, 7 months ago, something like that.
Yeah. And which is wild because, purple belts are wizards. Like, that's not, as you start as a white belt, you're like, oh, those guys know everything, man. That's crazy. They can do anything. And now to be doing it, it's like Ray said, at blue belt, you realize you don't know anything at all. So as many people out there whose buttons I can push, there's brown and black belts who can just pick me apart all day long in jiu-jitsu. And if that doesn't get you hooked, I don't know what will, because I'm too curious to find out what's next, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's been this idea that I've had for years, and I tell everyone about it, and it's why I keep coming back to jiu-jitsu personally, that I just have this strong feeling that everybody needs to have the ability to fight, or defend themselves in various different situations. And jiu-jitsu is just one of those. There's a lot of different ways that you could learn to fight, but I just feel like jiu-jitsu is, for me, the most effective one. It seems to be, it seems to be the one that it's hard to learn. I think it's super hard to learn. So you can kind of you can have that beginner's mindset throughout your entire career. Like both you, I'm sitting here in front of a black belt and a purple belt, which are both high levels. Most people will never ever even come close to sniffing those levels. And you both just said, I suck, which is kind of like what I love about it,
Yeah,
I had
for sure.
one of my professors that I trained with for a bit in Kansas City. Is the owner of 10th Planet Kansas City. His name's Jeremy Horton. And I did a podcast with him about jiu-jitsu, and he was talking to me about the idea that jiu-jitsu is for truth seekers. The idea is there's some truth that you're going to discover here, and there's some objective truth. Something will beat something else. No matter how you want to play it, no matter how you want to dice it down, someone will win this role, this engagement, this takedown, whatever. And that this environment can become, I guess, really addictive for people who are truth seekers, because where else can you go to find that kind of objective truth? There's very, very few places you can go to understand that on a really, physical level.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about honesty, I think. There's really, and it sounds a little bit of a cliche because people say it all the time, you see the memes, but in reality, I mean, I think it's true. The mats don't lie. You do what you do, and that's going to be it. If you win that takedown, you won the takedown. If you submit me, you submitted me. There's nothing that I can say, well, see, what happened is I was letting you work and I gave you. No, that doesn't matter. You did it and it happened, and I got to face the truth, or I can just be like this and be blinded to the truth and no progress from it. So, to your point, Tyler, for a truth seeker, it's great because you are looking for that ultimate honesty and truth on the mats, and you're going to find it.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of all combat sports. It's or you like you know you could even like broaden that to like individual sports, you know, whether it be like a tennis player even, or you know, but you know it's like it's you and the sport and the rules of the sport and the other person,
Yep.
and there's no hiding. There's no, you know, I'm a bullshit wizard, right? Like I can, you know, if you give me like an oral presentation, I can kind of like work my way, bullshit my way into something like that. But you can't do that on the mats. You're gonna get choked, or you're gonna get caught in some sort of submission, and there's no bullshitting.
There's more to it though. You mentioned, you know, this notion that everybody has some type of drive to want to know how to fight, right? I mean, that I agree with that. But as far as that truth seeking in sport goes, what's funny is you don't have people walking around being like, "Oh, I could beat a pro tennis player." You don't hear that. You don't hear someone walking around being like, I could dunk on LeBron." You know, that's not something you hear. But what you will hear is people walking around being like, "I could kick that guy's ass," or I could beat that guy up." And everybody thinks they just have some inbuilt ability to fight or know how to fight, but it doesn't work like that, you know. And as soon as we get people, I think there's two things that can happen when a brand new person comes on the mats, and we've seen it over and over again. Some people find out they really don't know how to fight, and that bothers them, and they leave. And then they go back to kind of protecting themselves in a lie, which is, yeah, I know how to fight. I don't need any of that jiu-jitsu stuff. And then some people come on the mats, and it shatters that notion that they have any inherent ability to fight, and that drives them to come right back to the mats because they've just found out some truth, and they'll just keep finding out more and more truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think with that truth, it comes to insecurity also. You know, it's like a lot of, I think people start fights, or people who tend to get into fights, like street fights and shit like that. There's typically a high level of like insecurity somewhere at play in that interaction. And that's really why I always tell everyone to learn how to fight. Whatever martial art you learn, whatever combat sport you're learning, because it gives you that confidence. And it brings me to that saying that Jordan Peterson said. I think Jordan Peterson started it. Maybe he got it from somewhere else. But it's like everybody should learn how to be dangerous, and then learn how to control that, and not ever have to use it. But you don't want to be that person walking around on the street like full of fear all the time, because you know that's not. Then you're going to make horrible decisions and possibly even start a fight that you don't need to start.
Yeah,
you know,
because you don't have a choice, and that's the beauty of being trained on any sort of combo sport. I'm not just going to sit here and say that jiu-jitsu is the best and nothing else works. There's a lot of things, but when you have that type of knowledge and training, you have options, right? And you go, well, I can choose to walk away. I can choose to tell this guy that he can have my wallet because that's all he wants, and it's not going to hurt my ego because I understand what's at stake here. At the same time, I can choose to protect myself accordingly if I have, you know, if he doesn't leave me a way out. But that comes to training. When you don't have that, you're in fight or flight mode, and you're always going to react based on emotion. And that reaction, most of the times, is going to be the wrong reaction. It's the one that's going to get you in more trouble. So from the self-control standpoint, it's also an amazing thing what we get to accomplish because we know where we stand, you know?
Yeah, knowing where you stand is important. Like for me, is a good point, right? Like I'm a pretty physically fit person. You know, I've got a good level of strength and endurance and all that stuff. But when I get on the mats and I get choked out and submitted consistently by other people, you kind of know your ranking in the world, and you're going to be less likely to go around talking a lot of shit, you know, to other people, which is, I think, important to know about yourself.
For sure, but it also, if and when the situation happens when you have to defend yourself, which, you know, we all hope it doesn't happen because it's never fun, you also have a dial of intensity, right? You have a force continuum. It doesn't always have to be a guttural, just fear or reaction where you're just going to destroy that guy, because now you have the ability to maybe tame him, hold him down, say, hey, man, calm down. Somebody call 911, you know, whatever it is, without having to completely go from 0 to 100. And that is super empowering. To know that I can hold a grown man on the ground like a child and not even hurt him, but keep him from moving, and more importantly, keep him from hurting me. I mean, it's truly like having a superpower.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think especially for young people, and maybe I'm biased here because how I have daughters and you know, significant others that, like, I want them to have that kind of confidence in themselves too. Like if things kind of went bad, they would know what to do and how to handle that situation because they've got the sets and reps in, many sets and reps in prior to that situation.
Absolutely.
There's a point here though too where, you know, there are a million self-defense seminars out there. I'm sure some of them are great and teach you some things, but none of them are going to help you get this into your body in a way that your muscle memory can actually utilize it, other than just training regularly. Yep. You know, my wife Andrea, after I started, I was like, hey, will you come to a couple classes? You know, I wanted her to have some of these tools too, like you're talking about. And she came, she did a few classes, she didn't love it, but eventually she was like, I'm going to just try this, right? And she ended up creating a documentary about that whole thing called American Jiu-Jitsu, about her first year in jiu-jitsu. You know, and now she's at an advanced level of her blue belt right now, just absolutely wrecking grown men who come in who think they know how to fight, you know, and that's super cool. And she's still early in that process too. But, you know, we can't take things away unless we train them all the time. And it's a lot to ask people to do that all the time. But again, that's another piece of truth, which is you can't just take a weekend course and understand how to take care of yourself forever. You know, you either engage in this aspect of things and get comfortable with it or not. I don't know. Maybe that's a little dark, but you gotta stay in this game, don't you think, right? Like,
no, but you're right. And you have to train live. That is super important too, right? We can drill all day long, and I mean, drilling's great. Obviously, you learn a lot of technique. You figure out a lot of finer points of how to do things. But unless you consistently are trying to apply those techniques and somebody doesn't want to let you apply them, and he's going to fight to stop you from it, then you don't know if it's going to work. And I think that's great. The fact that we get on the mats day in and day out, and when we roll, we truly can fight each other pretty close to 100% of intensity because we have a very powerful tool, which is the power of the tap, right? As soon as you tap, whether I agree with you tapping or not, I'm going to stop. I'm going to let you go, respect that, and then we go to fight another day. If and when that situation happens, all you got to do is remove that safety net from it. And you're just going to go full force. But as far as intensity, application, and even mindset, you're doing the exact same thing you've been doing day in and day out with your friends at the gym. So it's nothing new. While a real fight may be more overwhelming, scarier, you know, all those things, because there's a bigger emotional load on it, obviously, it's nothing new. You go, okay, I live here. I do this. So it's going to be fine. And I think that's why live training is so important. And that's why, you know, to your point, yeah, the weekend course may teach you amazing things. You may remember a few of those. You may forget most of them because that's usually the way it goes. But if you don't know how to constantly train them and continue to develop in a live environment, it's just simply not going to work.
Yeah, and go ahead, Tyler.
Well, I think about this a lot. So, like, I like that we're talking about it because, you know, there's another aspect here, which is sometimes people come in and watch and they're asking me questions. They want to know, like, how realistic are some of the things we're doing? And people don't always understand the rules that we've put in place in jiu-jitsu. There's basic things like we don't strike, right? I'm not going to strike my partner. I'm not going to poke them in the eyes or grab and rip on their fingers. You know, mostly we do all that stuff so that we can keep live training. But what you have to, I feel like, tell people sometimes, and maybe it's not all that obvious, is again, if you use any of this in a realistic situation, you can advance the degree of violence by whatever you need. So many situations, in all honesty, are low key. And it's like Ray said, you pin someone down and tell them to calm down, and they can tell they're not going to get out. That fight's pretty much going to be over. You're going to calm that situation down. But if you ever had to go extra miles and add strikes or even add some dark stuff, you know, like, especially for, you know, I think about females who train, like, they got to sometimes use all the tools available on their side. It doesn't matter what level of violence you need. If you got to poke someone's eyes out, you got to poke someone's eyes out. Like, if that's what it takes to get someone off you. So the real question is, well, then why don't we train any of that? Well, you know, I can show you that my body knows how to get to mount, and guess how easy it is to do damage once I'm in mount, if that makes sense. All right. Yep. I can show you how easy it is to do damage once I can take someone's back and completely control it. So I don't necessarily have to drill some of that, you know, those striking elements every single day, because if you understand the position and you understand how to get to these positions, you're going to be just fine when you need to add layers if you ever need to add layers of violence on top of that.
Absolutely. They're all there. And that's a little bit of the issue. Some people have said, well, you know, you're just in the gym rolling around with each other. In a real fight, I'm going to be able to poke you and bite you and strike you. And that's where I go, yeah, you're right. But guess what? So will I. I know jiu-jitsu, and on top of jiu-jitsu, if I need to hit you or poke your eye out because that's all I have, it's going to happen. But because I have an extra layer of understanding and knowing how to control a human opponent, then I'm going to be much more effective even on that. If all you got is the bite and the eye poke and you have no concept of how to get there, it's not going to work. So that's the difference.
I really hope Ethan doesn't clip this section of just you and me talking about poking people's eyes, because that would be like this becomes the social media clip. These guys are obsessed with poking eyes out, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think though that's that's what it really, for me, why I chose to train jiu-jitsu, and I chose that as the form, the method, because I've been in a lot of real fights, street fights and whatever else, and it always goes to the ground. Yeah, you might catch me, you might hit me. I mean, you may be superior on the feet, and if you don't knock me out, I'm probably going to hold on to you and drag you to the ground. And then that's where I feel like the majority of having to learn what you need to learn is what you do when you get to the ground, which kind of highlights what Ray said a little while ago about, he said there's lots of other art forms out there, and maybe jiu-jitsu is a way, but maybe it's not the way. But I don't know. You guys tell me, you're the experts. What would be a better form of like learning how to defend yourself and fight than jiu-jitsu?
I think where jiu-jitsu and another grappling arts, or grappling in general, let's talk about grappling, right? It can be jiu-jitsu, can even be wrestling, can be, anything that involves a man controlling another or a person controlling another person in close quarters. The reason why that type of fighting shines in a real altercation is because of a concept that is called forward pressure, right? And we've all seen this. If we've been in fights or even seen street fights, we see it all the time. When people try to apply other arts, like striking arts, for example, when you see a boxer fighting another boxer, they have a very good concept of distance, right? They know where to step so their punches are optimum. They know what range to stay in, but that's something you have to train for many, many years. What happens when you get in a fight with an untrained person is that due to adrenaline and due to like all the factors that are, aggravating the situation, that effect of forward pressure happens when you keep going forward, 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 and even without meaning to do so, you find yourself in a grappling situation. And you see it all the time at bar fights. People throw a couple punches and boom, they end up hugging each other. Now you're in grappling range. If you know how to grapple, you're going to be good. If you don't know how to grapple, not only are you not going to be effective, but unknowingly you're going to put yourself in a situation that's going to give you a disadvantage in that fight. So I guess that's where we shine as grapplers, is that people are going to do that closing the distance work that is sometimes hard. They're going to do it for you. You just got to sit there. You got to set it up, and they're going to come to you. They're going to initiate that grappling exchange without realizing it, and then you're in your world. So I think that's where the difference lies.
And you already said it, Ray, but it's also the only martial art, grappling, that you can practice at full capacity, at full intensity, without risking real long-term damage. I mean, you can't eat that many punches. I don't care what pads and headgear and gloves you've got on. You just still can't take that many punches before you start getting long-term effects. So where this one we can do all the time. And I don't want to necessarily push, Ethan, I'm sure you got your things you want to get through here, but I hope too we're going to talk about just how amazing and great and fun the sport is too, because the fighting, aspect and the combat aspect, it's obviously a huge piece of it. Anybody who does it is here for a good chunk of the reason for that. But I mean, I think we've seen a lot of other reasons why people train this as a sport, and it keeps them coming back too. So hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully we're going to go there too, because I love that part of it too.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
Super
on the
important.
agenda, and we can jump into. I'll throw a couple things that are on my mind to kind of throw out there, and then we can just kind of chew on whatever you want to chew on. But the things that I love about jiu-jitsu is exactly what you said. Like the chances of me getting into any kind of fight at this stage in my life are very, very slim. So like me walking around saying like, oh, I need to learn how to defend myself. Yes, it could happen, but most likely I'm probably not going to get into a fight. But the things I love about jiu-jitsu and the reasons why I really choose to do it are a few. First, I call it like the puzzle, right? Like it's the figuring out of where I put my hand and where I grip and where it's a constant like Rubik's Cube. Which is kind of fun to try and figure that out. The other part of it is like it's a great way it's a fun way to be fit. Like, I'm mostly just doing these things so I look better naked, if I'm being 100% honest. You know, just finding a way to different, more fun ways to be a fit, healthy person. And then the other part is the community. You know, though, that the brother and sisterhood, the family like environment that you build from, I mean, like, think about it. I grew up as an only child, so I only understand this in concept. But anyone who has siblings, you probably kick the shit out of each other a couple times, and then, but you guys love each other so much. Like, there's this aspect of, like, you know, we do hard things together, which brings us together in a bond. So I'm kind of, you guys chew on whatever part you want to jump on with that, but that's kind of been my experience.
You're absolutely right. I'm so glad you mentioned the community aspect, because that to me is huge, right? There's a lot of things that gets us through the door, like, you know, learning how to fight, for example. It's a big one, right? But what makes you stay, it's everything else, right? And one of the biggest parts is a sense of community. Ethan, you and I come from a military background. We know that, you know, the brotherhood, the bonds that we create in the Army that are, you know, are amazing, and that's, you know, that's another great path too. But comparing those to the bonds and the sense of community that I found in Jiu-Jitsu, it's heaven on earth. In Jiu-Jitsu, I found something even greater than that, which is saying a lot. Uh, Met amazing people, made amazing friends. Most of my best friends will destroy me every time we train together, and I love it, and it's great, man. And they're there for me, and I'm there for them. So it becomes sort of this weird, crazy cult where we wrestle each other, but we are doing it for self-development, right? To make each other better and to provide each other support that is going to transcend that time we spend on the mats, right? So I think the community aspect is huge in something like this.
There's your community if you don't do jiu-jitsu, which is made up of people who you, I don't know, went to school with, work with, see at various things. You guys do kind of the same thing. And then there's your community in jiu-jitsu, which for me is made up of people of all ages, a million different backgrounds, a million different jobs. They do everything. You cannot pin down who does jiu-jitsu, and it leads you to having the most interesting friends. I think I noticed that in my personal life too, where there was me on the road traveling prior to jiu-jitsu and then traveling after jiu-jitsu. And I would get to a town and I would go and do, you know, a few classes, a few rolls with guys at various gyms. And because of that mutual respect that jiu-jitsu is and the fact that we share this language, all of a sudden I have genuine friends in all these different cities all over the country. Like, I have people I could call up and they know me and they're tight with me because we did jiu-jitsu. We speak the same language. They get it. I get it.
Yep.
All of a sudden I was getting invited out to go do stuff. Let's go do this, that, whatever. You know, it's the most welcoming community because you have to actually earn it to earn someone's kind of respect in jiu-jitsu. Like, it's even funny. Andrea's kind of the worst about this. She'll probably hate that I brought this up, but she's always like, I don't really want to deal with people who don't do jiu-jitsu. I get that. Like,
I don't blame her at all.
Yeah, come on. You know, I want that, like, anchor of mutual respect really badly now.
Yeah, it's like we've all gone through a self-imposed rite of passage. And after you've gone through that, you are part of the community, and that's it. You're in for life. It's like the biggest gang in the world, right? You're in, and that's it. You're one of us, and no matter what happens, we got you. We got your back. Even if we compete against each other, that's another thing. I've competed a lot, and I've had plenty of opponents that when we're in the match, we're trying to kill each other like we're enemies. The moment that timer ends, no matter who wins, we're friends for life. We make plans to get together and train, exchange knowledge. We'll add each other on social media, and we're friends. And, you know, years later, we're still friends. And that's great, man. I mean, I don't really understand how that happens. Like, psychologically, it's hard to understand how, well, this guy that not only did he try to kill me for 5 minutes, but he actually beat me. And I lost. So I should be, I should be offended. But no, I am not. I respect this guy. I love him. And we're friends. And yeah, let's go from here. So not in a lot of places you can find that kind of connection.
Yeah, and I think that's a powerful piece of this, that I think the person who's never tried jiu-jitsu, maybe they've heard, probably almost no one hasn't heard of it at this point, but I think that the person who's never tried it, it's the things that keep them away that I find it to actually be the opposite. For example, someone's like, oh, I'm going to walk in there, it's going to be a gladiator camp. These people are going to fucking like try to beat me up, and they're going to bully me around, and they're going to treat me like shit, which couldn't be further from the truth, and I want more people to know that and understand that if that's what's keeping them away from walking in whatever jiu-jitsu school that they, you know, gym that they have kind of been eyeballing, if that's what's keeping them away, then I can't express enough that it's not like that at all.
It is not. I hear that a lot too. People, I don't know, man. I'm too old. I don't want to go in there and get my ass kicked. And what I say is that, well, you are not going to get your ass kicked right away. Don't get me wrong. You are going to. But by the time you get to the point in which you are starting getting your butt handed to you by your training partners, you're actually going to enjoy it. Which is like, if you never done it, it's like, how am I ever going to enjoy that? But you are, because now you're in that learning curve, because now you know the basics, you know what to expect. But for people going in day one, week one, that should never be the case. And, you know, speaking for Tyler or myself, we make it a point to ensure that that is not the case, because we want people who have an experience to understand why we're doing this. Because it'd be so easy for me to grab the new guy walking through, let me beat you up for 5 minutes and show you how good I am. Okay, that's great. That doesn't help him, right? What helps him is showing him what can happen and how good he can get if he sticks with it. So that's, you know, that's why they need, to your point, that's why they need to understand, realize that nothing's going to happen. It's going to be the entire opposite.
Yeah, you don't want anybody coming in and getting completely blindsided by that experience. You know, it's hard enough to walk in that door. That's what they say is the hardest belt to get is your white belt.
Yep.
Because it is hard to walk in that door for the first time, and it's so intimidating. So you really want a gym that can encourage you. And there's a process there where it's encouragement until you are ready to stand on your own 2 feet, and then you can take the ass kicking. But no one's ever going to have you do that the second you walk. Well, I'm sorry. We would never do that the second you walk in the door. And I think that's crucial. I think people should be very picky with where they start their jiu-jitsu journey and try a lot of places and make sure they're going to have a place that's going to work with them. But that's not to say that you shouldn't be pushed. I think that's another element of it too. You know, I don't ever want someone being so comfy that they don't understand the power of what this is, if that makes sense. So while when Ray rolls with someone for the first time, he's not going to make them tap 20 times. There's nothing, you know, they'll learn nothing from that. But what he might do, because what I've seen him do to a lot of people, is show them that, oh, you're 200 pounds? No, you're not. You know, he's going to get right on top of you. He's going to sweep you right over. You're going to realize you have no balance. You have no control. This person's completely in control. That is a lesson you can be shown without it having to be mean. And I think that's part of the truth thing. That's you got to see that lesson right out the door. And honestly, martial arts schools that can't show you that lesson, you know, they're not probably teaching a real martial art. You know, that's the old thing. You have to play along with the professor who's showing some nonsense technique. I watch a little too much McDojo Life on Instagram, I guess. But, you know, you should be able to be shown why this works, you know, pretty quickly and in a pretty kind way, to be honest.
No, you're right. And that's where being an instructor, you have to understand how to manage and gain that intensity, right? Because if you're, regardless of your level, right, if you're only able to roll 100% and completely destroy people to make your stuff works, maybe you're missing something, right? I can definitely do that, but it is a lot harder, and it's a higher expression of the art, in my opinion, to not do that, but just to do just enough to control you, keep you on your toes, and show you, hey, look, you got me by 50 pounds, but I don't care, because you're still not moving. And that's what gets people hooked, and that's where that puzzle and that problem solving that you were mentioning before and everything starts to grow, because you go, man, I need to learn this, because this feels like magic. And it is not, but, you know.
Yeah, that's been my personal experience with it, is that one, going into, you know, as a beginner into jiu-jitsu, I was my own worst enemy. No one was out to get me. Nobody was out to teach me a lesson or show me what they know or anything. It's just like my level of intensity and effort was the problem, you know, because and the beauty of it, like as you mentioned, is that everyone you go up against, even another white belt who's only been there for a few months, or you know, they have learned enough control to let you kind of like do your thing and kind of like make the mistakes without kind of allowing it, like having enough skill to allow you to do those things so that you can learn. And it's a beautiful thing. It's really you know, it's kind of powerful. And again, anyone who's listening, you know, you have to know that you're going to go in there, and yes, everybody in there is going to be better than you, but everybody in there is also going to meet you at your level and and allow you to kind of learn and grow without hurting you or demeaning you or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm actually chuckling over here because I'm remembering a story in regards to that. Right, when I used to work at the Combatives Academy in Fort Lewis, Washington, I was a full-time instructor for a while. This coworker of mine, his name is Marcus Edwards. Hopefully he's listening. Who knows where he is now? Great guy, amazing fighter. He was an all-Army champion several times back in the day. Just incredible fighter, very big guy. He was probably like over 300 pounds, and still will train all the time. Not a problem, no big deal, right? But sometimes we'll get soldiers coming into open mats or coming into like test stuff out that they don't really think, or they didn't really think Combatives was gonna work. And Marcus was coming, hey Ray, come here real quick. Go beat up that guy. It's like, dude, why? Why don't you beat him up? So, it's because I'm big, man. If I beat him up, no one's gonna care. But you're little, so you need to go show him. I was like, all right, I guess I go. So I was the mat enforcement because of my size, because I was a small guy.
Yeah, there's nothing more humbling. And so to Tyler's point from earlier when he was mentioning how good his wife Andrea is, you know, someone who's smaller than you, not as strong as you, and will just kick your ass like with ease, you know, and then not to, you know, overemphasize anything to do with like gender roles and everything else, but as a man, a strong man, and this has happened to me many times in many situations, a woman just like handing you your ass on the daily basis consistently, you know, there's a level of humility that comes with that.
Yeah, but even mentioning the gender, since you kind of touched up on it, we can expand on it. It doesn't even matter. When I roll with really good females, when I roll with Andrea, for example, which we are about around the same size, and the fact that she's a female has nothing to do with the interaction. I don't go in there going, oh, well, I'm going to roll with her because she's a woman. Because I know I'm going to do jiu-jitsu, because if I don't do jiu-jitsu, she will do jiu-jitsu on me. And it doesn't matter. It's anyone's game. Going back to the Army Combatives example, it's probably the only sports discipline or competition that I've seen in which you see males and females competing against each other, which is what happened in Army Combatives tournament. And it doesn't matter. You see these women that are amazing just beating men all the time because they are so in tune with their technique that it doesn't really matter. At that point, gender doesn't matter. So, I mean, how empowering is that, right?
You can't ever judge your opponent by anything that you think you can. You know, I've rolled with big guys who don't actually, you find out after you can almost tell instantly when you grab someone, by the way, if they've got a good amount of training or not. I've rolled with giant dudes who it's like, oh, you're pretty new to this, and you kind of flop them around. But then you roll with, you know, some tiny looking dorky nerdy guy in the corner, and I mean, he messes you up for 5 minutes, and you learn pretty quick that there's no standard of being good at this. They're just this technique transcends pretty much any I don't know, demographic you could pick.
Yeah, it's not your skill is not necessarily connected to your physicality. So
yeah, sometimes you deal with kids who've been doing it since they were 2 years old.
Oh God,
and
yeah.
They're essentially a black belt, but they just can't have it yet because they're not 16 or whatever. You know, there's some kids that can mess you up if you don't know any better. Some of our kids in our kids programs could you know, roll circles around brand new people. You know, Mason in particular. If it just came down to pure technique, he could mess up a day one person 100%. Pretty good.
100%. I've gone against 16, 17-year-old kids in open mats that completely destroy me. I go, man, how long you been training for? They go, 15 years since I was 2. I was okay, yeah, no wonder. You've been training the same as me, but you're young and I'm not, so there you are. So it's amazing.
Yeah, Tyler touched on, so it kind of brings me to the sport of jiu-jitsu, which Tyler touched on a little while ago, and you guys definitely have a culture of like emphasizing, you know, you encouraging people to try to compete, even if it was just like one time. And I'm kind of just curious about your guys' mindset and philosophy on competition and the sport of jiu-jitsu versus, you know, self-defense or fitness or whatever else.
My first ever professor, Sonny Parlin in Bradenton, Florida, who's a good friend and has helped us out, given us lots of great advice with Airlock. He described the I don't know, the ranking of how difficult jiu-jitsu can be like this. He says at the very top is an actual fight. One level below that, that's a competition. A level below that, you've got maybe an open mat with a lot of different people there. Then you've got an open mat with the people you normally train with. And so there's levels of intensity that you can build up to. And so once someone has engaged in those other levels and they're comfortable going to other open mats and rolling with lots of different people, because we want our guys to roll with, guys and gals to roll with lots of different people, then maybe it's time to think about competing. because it's a totally different experience. It is it's a total mind fuck for days in advance, weeks in advance, right up until you start going. The adrenaline is like nothing else. You're gonna get out there and absolutely suck immediately because it's so intimidating. But you know, it does make you better. A lot of people talk about how it's, you know, I've heard it said one competition's worth 3 months of training or something like that. And I'm not sure if I completely agree with that, but I know that's a lot of people's opinions. So, you know, it's worth, merits some consideration, I guess.
No, I agree. So it also depends on how you approach it, of course. You know, a lot of people compete for lots of different reasons. Some guys are just natural athletes and they're at their peak of jiu-jitsu and physicality. They want to be one of the best in the world and all this stuff, win all these stars. That's great. That's amazing. I fully support it, right? For the rest of us, especially as we age, I mean, I'm closer to 50 than I'm to 40, right? So I'm probably not going to go be a world champion. I could be a Masters world champion, but that's not real. So why do I compete? Like, why do I care, right? Why do I pay $200 to get a $25 medal? I mean, that's like the worst deal ever, right? It's simply because the way that I like to see it, it's an extension of training, right? The only thing, or one of the few things that you can really mimic at the gym is that fight or flight response, right? When I'm rolling with Tyler, for example, no matter how hard we're going, I don't feel that way because I know he's truly not trying to hurt me. Granted, accidents do happen. Maybe I get injured because of an accident and it's fine, but he's not actively trying to hurt me, right? So I don't feel that. That adrenaline release, that fight or flight response that we feel, it's exactly what we're going to have in a real fight. And that is what we need to learn to control, right? Our brain doesn't really know the difference, right? When you're in fight or flight, your brain doesn't know that you're in fight or flight because you're fighting for your life out on the street or because you're in a competition. Fight or flight is fight or flight, the same. So the more you get used to working through those emotions, the better you are going to be. Because if you can apply jiu-jitsu at a somewhat high level when you're having all that craziness going through your brain and all those hormones going through your body, when you find yourself calm and relaxed, you're going to do much better. So that's why, to your point, that's why people say it's equal to 3 months of training. I don't know if that's the exact number. I don't know if that's even something we can quantify, but definitely competing will bring your game up. And that's why after a good competition, you show up to the gym the next week and you're just raking everybody because you're at that point, you're at that level.
And it's you versus you. And like, that's at least how we approach it as a gym. Like, I'm the king of bronze medals. I really like my bronze medals because I went in and did something that was super hard for me, and I didn't completely lose. You know, I think I have 2 bronzes in 4-man divisions, so I didn't get swept completely, right? I did something, and that was an accomplishment. Every time any one of our guys gets a bronze medal, a silver medal, I'm stoked. If they don't get a medal but they fought really hard, I'm stoked. As a gym, as Airlock, I think our take is you're there. It's you versus you. You know, great if you win that match. Fantastic. Congratulations. But you went there and the hard part was just showing up 100%. And slapping hands because it's a lot to put yourself through.
That is your biggest opponent.
That's what we respect, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, for me personally, and I've talked about this before, so you guys have probably heard it offline, but I suffer from severe competition anxiety. And that's not going to go away. I've competed many times. I'm probably going to do it a lot more times before my time's over. It doesn't matter. I get really anxious, and the day off, I have the worst and the most negative self-talk you can imagine. I get in the car driving to the tournament, and that is the worst pity party ever. Why am I doing this? I'm tired. I should be in bed. I'm too old for this. I'm going to get hurt. Why do I even bother? Blah, blah, blah. You know, everything. And now I got to the point that I know it's going to happen, so I just let that little movie play in my head. And then when it's over, I go, okay, cool. I don't care. I'm still going to do it. Because, you know, I got to defeat that barrier that I'm self-imposing in front of me that is not going to let me perform. Because I feel that if you can't get that under control in such an extreme circumstance, then it's going to start ruling your life, right? Next thing you know, it's going to bleed into other circumstances of your life. Am I going to make this decision at work? Well, what if it goes wrong? What if this, that? And then now you're slowing yourself and limiting yourself into what you can do in life because it becomes a habit, just like everything you do, right? So that's why, in that sense, jiu-jitsu is so good for self-development, especially if you put yourself in that stressful situation and you learn to deal with the worst enemy that you will ever have, which is you.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the most powerful pieces of jiu-jitsu for me personally, because I love self-development, self-discovery. You know, the the introspection that comes with any endeavor. And I feel like jiu-jitsu has just been an amazing teacher, you know, and I found that the people who are really good at jiu-jitsu, they're not the best athletes, they're not the most fit, they're not they've got the best mindset. They've got a philosophy and a perspective on life that is just powerful. And that's what ends up making them so good at jiu-jitsu, because there's, like you said, there's all these life lessons that you pick up, and you can apply them to every single aspect of your life.
Yep.
We can't we can sugarcoat it too if you want. You guys both, because you were in the military, have some experience of some, I don't know, a challenge, right? Some coming of age to make yourselves tougher. You had to go through training. You had to deal with a lot of things. But for us in the civilian world, we don't have that ring of fire. We don't have a gauntlet to go through. And the truth of it is, a lot of us are just little bitches. And once you start doing jiu-jitsu for a while, you're like, oh, I'm noticing that the bitch is leaving my system. And I'm not that way anymore. You know, you get tougher over time. No matter if you're talking physically tough or whatever. I actually was trying to figure out before we started recording, like, how many years I've been doing this. I went back, I scrolled back through my Instagram to when I first started jiu-jitsu. And there's a picture of me holding up my arms, and there's bruises. Like, there's 100 bruises all over my arms. And I realized that it's not just mental, it's physical. Like, I don't bruise anymore at all. And, you know, it's not like I'm doing less jiu-jitsu or going less hard. It's super rare if I find a bruise on my body. It's just your body toughens up, your mind toughens up. And again, if you don't have that, I think the military could be one way of going about it. But for the rest of us, this is one pathway to become tougher. And at the end of the day, we all want that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, well, we got to seek it too. Because, like, you know, whether it's jiu-jitsu or the military, and I'm sure Ethan can agree with that, it is very easy to just skate through and do just enough to be okay, but not put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. Only a few of us choose to go, okay, I'm going to go the extra mile. I'm going to volunteer for this super hard school, for this super hard training. I'm going to get on the mats and roll with the toughest, meanest looking dude in the room, no matter how the outcome is, because I want to put myself there and be ultimately better for it. But it also has to be a conscious decision, because the norm rather than the exception is to be comfortable, and we can find comfort anywhere because that's what we do as humans, but that's not going to help us grow. It's just going to help us stay where we are.
Yeah, I 100% agree, because you can see it, like, you know, I kind of liken jiu-jitsu, like, people who train consistently in jiu-jitsu, you know, like, people often, like, we have a thing like Veterans Day and all this stuff for the military, and these you know, these praise and this level of respect that people lend to folks who've been in the military. But anyone who's been in the military know that there's a ton of shitbags and people who just slide through and they don't excel, but they still get the title of being a veteran and get the benefits of that. And I liken it to the comparison to, like, law enforcement, fire, paramedics who choose a career field and who are in the trenches every single day. Mm-hmm. You know, you know, like, when you're, again, even as a ranger, right? Like, yes, I trained really hard and I did all this training, but me being in a real situation where it's life or death and I'm in a firefight and shit like that is very rare. And they last for seconds usually. You know, and what I love about jiu-jitsu and why I choose to do that is because it's a daily hard endeavor. It's a daily discipline of consistent habit that you don't really get anywhere else. Even in the hardest of military training, there's a fine. You start it, you know, you go through something hard and then it ends, and then it's kind of easy again for a while. Yep. And jiu-jitsu is not like that.
No, it's continuous, and it should get harder. Like, that curve should continue to go. Even, you know, no matter how good you get, you should seek that. One of my instructors used to say, if you are the best guy on the mats, you need to find different mats, because that's not good for you. You need to go find a challenge somewhere else, or you need to figure out a way to make that environment more challenging for you. Because if you're the best on the mats, it may just be that you're the instructor, right, and you're the most advanced guy there. You can really leave, but how are you going to tailor your training to continue getting that, you know, those challenges that you grew up with? So what can you do? Are you going to put yourself in really bad positions on purpose so your students can smash you? What are you going to do, etc.? Whatever that, you know, however that looks like, and it's different for everybody, you have to seek that discomfort. Otherwise, we're going to stagnate.
Yeah, so speaking of discomfort, there's a whole level of this conversation that I wanted to jump into, and maybe this is a good time for it, because on top of being jujitsu practitioners, athletes in the sport of jujitsu, and you guys chose to jump into the business of jujitsu, to open up your own school, which is a whole nother level of hard. On top of what you already do through your daily practice, and I really am curious about like what that's been like for you. You guys are in year 2, right? Is it year 2 of being a business?
Almost, yeah.
Yeah. So so I'm kind of just curious, like what that's been like, and like what type of different kind of considerations do you guys have to take into account being business owners?
Yeah, we started this whole thing because we wanted to build something really specific. And the cool thing is you were actually the one to link up Ray and I. You are the centerpiece of this connection that we had. And when we got together, we talked about what are your values in jiu-jitsu? What do you want to see? What type of school would you want to build? And we each bring something different that has worked well and meshed well together. So obviously Ray is bringing the knowledge. He's bringing the legitimacy. He brings the fact that he's been in this, larger Austin community doing jiu-jitsu for so long, where I'm an outsider. But as an outsider, I get to bring the fact that I have trained at, again, like I said, dozens of gyms all over the country. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. I know what it should look like when someone starts somewhere. I know what it looks like when someone is a visitor somewhere. And I also have, a pretty strong business background. And so bringing those two things together, we kind of worked our way into how can we really create a unique experience. And I think most of our people who train with us, specifically the ones who have trained at other gyms, would highlight the unique aspects of Airlock being the level of attention you actually get from your instructors, the fact that we're very casual about a lot of things, but not how we want our jiu-jitsu to go, which means we're very casual about what you wear and if you're running late and all these things that, in our opinion, a gym should be pretty casual about. But what we're not casual about is you should be rolling. You should be rolling all the time, every class for a good long time. We set aside a ton of time for rolling. You should be asking questions. We want to watch where you're at. I think Ray and I could break down exactly the game of every single person in the gym right now, because we know exactly where they're at because we actually bother to pay attention. We're not on our phones during rolls. If we're not rolling, we're watching, we're engaged. And sometimes we've had to make ourselves not roll. Ray rolls way more than me, man. Some nights I'm like, I need to not roll tonight because I've got morning class tomorrow, and that guy just rolls anyway. But I think we both combined our strengths into this, and I think the difference is noticeable. I think our people would say that too. That's what I hear, at least.
No, I agree. So like for me, for example, from my from the instructor point of view, which is my my strength in here, because Tyler is more of the business guy and I'm more the jiu-jitsu guy. I've been teaching jiu-jitsu for a long time. I've been teaching inside the Army, outside the Army, working for other people, contracting for various self-defense companies out there. So I've been doing this for a while. But when you are teaching in a temporary capacity like that, don't get me wrong, I will do my best to provide my absolute best knowledge and possible, make people learn the most they can. But don't really have, because it's short term, I never really had that connection with my students that I have now, to where I have to think about them clearly. And it can be a cookie cutter approach to my classes, because I got to see, okay, I'm teaching this, but how is Tyler going to do that according to his body type? Okay, then I got to teach a certain way, but okay, it's not just Tyler on the mats. Now we have Ethan. How's Ethan going to handle this? Is this good for so-and-so? And, because I know, and because we know our students, like Tyler was saying, in a way, it's a lot harder to plan training and plan classes because of that. But I feel that it's my job and my duty and my responsibility to provide them that personalized attention. I go, okay, this is the technique of the day, but you are going to do it this way because that is what suits you. Or maybe this isn't for you. Maybe I got to teach you something else in place of that, because I want your game to be not only efficient and effective, but I want it to be unique, and I want it to be an expression of who you are. Because the worst thing that I can envision as an instructor is have a bunch of little Ray robots running around. They're like me, they all dress like me, they all move like me, they use the same techniques that I do. Okay, that's not cool. I want you to be yourself, and I want your jiu-jitsu to be yours and be an expression of who you are and how you think and resolve problems. Uh, with me providing that guidance, but tailoring to your needs. So I think that's what we strive to do, and I think that's why we have very a lot of students that are in the beginning stages, like late white belt, early blue belt, that are so much more efficient and effective on the mats than other people because they get that. At least that's what I'm hoping for.
I'm glad that you just mentioned something. I hadn't really thought much about it till you just said it. But I think the thing I love about Airlock so much is how it provides me the opportunity, an expression of self, which is kind of how I live my life anyway. Like that's how I feel like the highest form of being is just being completely comfortable and authentic in being who the fuck you are, right? And being unapologetic about it. And you guys have really created a culture and environment that made me feel so like comfortable in doing that, right? Just being a more expressed version of me. And so I think you guys bring a real talent to that.
Yeah. Why would we try to shut down your strength? Your strength is your strength. That's who you are. Why would we try to shut down me from being super long and using a lot of, tall guy techniques? It wouldn't make any sense. So everybody should have their own game. I feel like we work with body types like a lot. I don't even think about it a lot, Ray, but like we consider that all the time.
Yep. Yeah, we do. We do, and we discuss it, and sometimes we teach something, and halfway through the class we have to adapt it because we figure out, hey, you know what, this isn't working for me. What am I doing wrong? And you're not doing anything wrong. It's just doesn't fit you. So let's figure it out and help you express that particular technique, that particular part of your jiu-jitsu according to who you are. I remember when I started training, one of my first professors, Jason Palacios in Washington, one of the most amazing jiu-jitsu practitioners I've ever met. Great guy too. I didn't get her first because I will ask questions, right? Beginner, typical white belt question. Hey, so in this technique, do I put my hand here or do I put it here? And he will say, whatever you want. I'm like, whatever you want, bro. Like, teach me, man. Like, I don't know. Now I get it. What he meant is like, you need to place it where it feels natural for you because you need to move naturally. If you're doing it awkwardly, you're not doing it right. So that's something that he instilled in me from the very early days when I go, okay, cool. Obviously, there's things that you have to do a certain way, and if you don't do it like that, they're wrong. But because jiu-jitsu is such a conceptual art rather than an ABC by the numbers art, there's a lot of room for your personal expression and for you to say, you know what, even though my instructor said to grab here, I'm going to grab a little higher because I think that it works best for me. And no one should correct you and say, hey, don't do it like that, do it like I do, because that is just very, very close-minded.
Yeah, I love that. Just kind of and that's also the freedom to, you learn through experience, and like you're going to put your hand somewhere and maybe get your arm ripped off because the other guy, there's the action, the counter action, and the reaction in every single thing that you do in jiu-jitsu, and you learn real quick when your action or counter reaction was misplaced.
Oh, for sure. If you make that mistake, you're going to learn quickly. You're going to see it happen. It's like, I don't even have to tell you.
Yeah, it's amazing teacher without anyone having to tell you, I'm curious, what's been the most difficult part of business for you guys? Business is hard. I talk, on this show, we have a lot of business owners, and I just tend to like rub elbow. I guess just being in business, you tend to rub elbows with other business owners. And I'm kind of just curious, what's been the most challenging aspect of whether it be your specific type of business or just business in general?
There's a lot of things that are challenging for different reasons. I would say a new challenge for me was in the world of genuine brick and mortar, a real place, because having a place that's physical adds new layers. I have only ever done business in a remote aspect, and so having a location changed the game because, number one, you have to sort of extend a lot of belief in yourself a lot further than you would think. Leases are very scary things to sign, and then on top of that, you have other new challenges that pop up on a regular basis. So whether we have, an AC unit that started dumping water on us one day for no reason, and what are we going to do now? Or, it's all these little things that come with having that extra piece of just having a place. And I think people, like, if people have never, rented a space before, it's it's an interesting experience, you know. And it was new for me as a business owner, because you don't have the consistency yet, and everything you're banking on is, I think we can grow, you know, to this level to sustain this, but we don't know yet. Anyway, let's go ahead and rent the space. So that was a bit scary.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think for me, finding the right balance to operate properly in all aspects of my life has been the biggest challenge. Obviously, having a business and something as involved as a jiu-jitsu gym, especially in the early stages, and me being the head instructor, I have to be there. I have to teach class. People are there because they need to learn from me, right? There's no getting out of that. So how do I balance those requirements with everything else in life, with work, with family life? If I'm all in on one side, then the other aspect of my life is going to start to suffer. But then again, if I just move the balance to the other way, to I'm paying attention at home and doing all these other things too much to where the business is being neglected, that's also not good. So finding that balance and walking that little tightrope and, you know, try not to fall on either side, it's been hard. I think it's been great as a learning experience for me as well, because it's made me a better communicator, if that makes sense, because I have to express to, you know, all the people that are involved in every aspects of my life, whether it's my partner or my wife or my kids, whatever. We need to communicate. We need to figure out and find ways to be there for each other and make what we are doing successful without neglecting one another. So it's been interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, I think that's what I love about business, because like jiu-jitsu, I think that they have a lot of similarities, right? Like, it's a teacher, and you get into these uncomfortable situations, and like Tyler mentioned, there's like all these limitations and these constraints that you have to work with, and these fears that you have to confront. Yeah, like having a brick and mortar business where it's like, one, you have so many limitations tied to that. One, you're locked to one location, which means, you know, you really have to attract and reach out to people who it's convenient, because it doesn't matter how great Airlock Jiu Jitsu is. If I live in St. Louis, Missouri, it doesn't matter to me.
Exactly.
You know, so you've got this limitation of the geographic and then you've got these, you know, and then you've got things like what you talked about is like, I have, as a human being, as a person, as the business owner, I have limitations, right? Like, I have time constraints. I have other things going on in my life, and I have to learn. It forces me to prioritize what matters. It forces me to kind of like sort and rank where I'm going to give my time and energy in ways that you really wouldn't have had to do in any other ways. And because it's a business, and for like me and other people, it's like, it's literally how I put food on the table. Yep. You know, so how do I figure this all out? And it's a puzzle. It's another Rubik's Cube. And that's why I mentioned it as a challenge, because you guys choose to do jiu-jitsu, which is already hard. It's its own Rubik's Cube. And then you added the layer of business on top of that, which makes it infinitely more difficult, you know?
We also both embrace the roles that we really love too, though. So, you know, Ray loves coaching jiu-jitsu. I love doing business. So it's never much of a chore to get Ray to coach a class, and it's never much of a chore to get me to, you know, write another newsletter or, you know, fix something on our website or run the accounting. Like, I like those things. So if we hadn't come in with that attitude, I think it would have been a lot tougher too.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think we are, at least speaking for myself, I feel very, very lucky and blessed that that's the dynamic we have. I'll say straight up, if I didn't have Tyler with me, I wouldn't be doing this, because yes, I can handle the classes, the jiu-jitsu, the technique, everything. I will be a wreck on the business side of the house. So, you know, having that support frees me a lot more as an instructor, because, you know, I'm just going to come in here and teach the best class I possibly can and make my students great, because I know the business is running well. So, I mean, it's great. It's a match made in heaven.
Yeah. And I think everybody needs that. It's the, whenever you have a problem in business or life, same, it's like, it's always who, not how. You know, we're all going to operate best when we're within our own unique abilities. And if there's something on your plate that is not in your wheelhouse, the question isn't how, the question is who.
Exactly.
Who can do this for me? And it's in their unique ability. And you guys, like you mentioned, pair up beautifully together to figure, you know, the right who is in the right seat to get the how done, you know?
I agree. I've seen a lot of other business partners too try to do both jobs. Both people do both jobs. And it's always interesting. You know, like at the end of the day, Ray doesn't want to do the books, but I actually kind of like doing the books. And at the end of the day, if I don't feel like coaching a certain technique or whatever, he never feels like that. He always wants to teach someone something new. I mean, he's the last guy on the mats every night when I'm like, can we clean up and I can go home now? I'm tired, you know? And he's showing some students something that they're asking about. That's where we should be. Not both half trying to do each other's jobs. You know, it doesn't make any sense.
Now we're duplicating work too. Oh, you're doing the books, but I'm going to do the books too. So now it's going to be more messy and complicated because we got too many hands in there. And that, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I agree. Well, bringing this episode to a close, first of all, I want to express a ton of gratitude for you guys. One, gratitude for who you've been in my life, my teachers, my instructors who've taught me jiu-jitsu and taught me a lot of things just about jiu-jitsu, but also just the type of people that you show up as in my community, as my expanded family. You guys have been people of high character and integrity, and just really positive people to be around. So I just want to express that gratitude here to you guys. And because we have a pretty hyper local audience on the show, people are going to listen to this episode and want to know how to find you guys, how they can get involved with Airlock, or maybe they've got some questions. So yeah, let the people out there know how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, we can be found pretty much anywhere. Airlockbjj.com is the website, but we have a pretty fun Instagram presence as well. Actually, if you go to the website, we also have a decent little blog and newsletter that I try to keep up, and I'll send interesting stuff sometimes every now and then, hopefully make people laugh. What we really want people to do is come in for a trial class. I want them to come in for a free class and meet everybody and see what they think about it, and let us give you some tools and help you understand what this is, because that's all day one is anyway. And then, if that's something you're interested in pursuing, that's what we want to do. I always like when people will call and let me know what day they want to come by. That way I know for sure that whoever's coaching the class knows they've got someone new coming in. So it's always nice if you give us the heads up about that, so we can kind of tailor the material. And or even find you like a great training partner. Like it might be like, hey, I'm going to call this person up. I want them there when you come in, because you two would pair up really nicely together, body types, whatever. The other thing for us is, and I stress this to everybody, we don't do long-term contracts with anyone, and that's pretty rare in the world of martial arts. It makes sense. A lot of gym owners like a year contract, a 6-month contract, whatever. We're not fans of it. So we really want people training who want to be training. And we both want to have to do our job every day to make sure you're staying engaged in this sport and getting the support you need, and that it makes sense in your life. So there's the elevator pitch. Ray, did I miss anything good there? I mean, just come do jiu-jitsu, right? Yeah, look for the spaceman. Let's go.
That's perfect. The only thing that I will add is even if you are not sure that is the day you're going to get on the mats and take your first class, you can still come in and visit us. We'd love to meet you. Let's talk. We'll show you. You're welcome to see what we do. You're welcome to ask all the questions in the world to see if this is something you want to invest your time and your money, because we all, not everybody has a lot of those, right? So we need to make sure that we make smart decisions when it comes to those assets. So yeah, I mean, we try to be approachable, and I will answer any jiu-jitsu question that I am able to. The only question that I'm going to answer to my students or visitors is something that I truly don't know, right? But from us, you never hear something. Well, that's we do it like that because that's how we do it. That's what I said. That's a crazy answer, right? We want you to know and understand exactly what you're getting yourself into. So feel free to ask. I mean, going back to what I was saying before, sometimes that first step is super intimidating, but I can stress enough that it doesn't have to be. Just come talk to us, ask us, and we'll explain it. And then if after that you still decide that it's not for you, we can still be friends. It's not a big deal.
And we left out a really important part of this during the episode, which is okay because we're talking about our own experiences, but we left out the kids. I don't know that anybody needs to be sold on the notion of kids martial arts anymore. I mean, it's the best place for a kid to understand discipline, keep themselves safe, be a part of not bullying or even helping their friends who are being bullied. We want our kids to have strength, and martial arts is a place to do it. And to me, jiu-jitsu is the best place because that's where they're going to learn, again, like we talked about, not to necessarily strike someone, but to control, to grapple, to get someone to the ground and call an adult over. I mean, our kids are so calm in a fighting situation. It's really amazing to see. And we've had kids doing it now with us for the last year and a half that we've been open, and there are several of them that is not the same kid anymore in all the best ways. They get so brave. We very rarely have tears on the mats now. You know, when a kid first starts and they're afraid, oh, I got pushed over, and now these kids get tough as nails. It's really cool to see.
Even when we have tears on the mat, they still perform. We have this little girl who, I mean, she cries sometimes, and you know, she gets hurt, whatever, makes it, whatever the reason is. A while ago, we made a deal with her. Say, hey, listen, you can cry, you're allowed to cry, but you gotta keep going. So sure enough, she cries, and you see her with tears in her eyes, just streaming down, and she's still fighting kids and knocking them down to the ground, which is beautiful. It's amazing to see.
Yeah. We have our. That's how I roll on the inside.
Yeah.
So we have a kids class that's ages 5 through 9 right now. Older than that, and we've been kind of pairing kids up individually because it's a much smaller segment of kids that do it between the ages where they're ready for adult class, but you know, too old for kids class. So we kind of work with those ones individually. But yeah, I think every parent should at least take their kid to try a jiu-jitsu class. You know, see how that goes. You might learn something too, just bringing them for that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I love it, guys. Obviously, I'm big fans of you guys. We will put all of so anyone who's listening again and wants to know how to reach out to these guys, we're going to put all their links in the comments or in the description section, so you know how to get a hold of these guys. Definitely check them out. Again, I think the best endorsement that I can give for Airlock is that that's where I go. You know, that's I could choose to go to a lot of different places, and I choose to go to these guys because I think they're the best. So I can't endorse you guys enough. And yeah, just I appreciate you guys for being on the show. Thank you for your time, and I can't wait to get back. You know, I'm jonesing bad to get back on the mats with you guys, and still got a bit more time, but I'll be there as soon as I can.
Yeah, man, we definitely miss you on the mats. You gotta get up there, and you know, thank you for having us. Thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we are and what we've been doing lately. So it's been great.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Ethan. We miss you. Come on back.
All right, we'll see you soon.